For thousands of years, chocolate wasn't sweet. It wasn't wrapped in shiny foil. It wasn't given as a Valentine's gift. It certainly wasn't something children begged their parents to buy. Instead, it was bitter, spicy, and so valuable that kings guarded it, priests offered it to the gods, and warriors drank it before marching into battle. Entire fortunes were built around tiny cacao beans. In some places, those beans were even used as money. Yet the most surprising part isn't that chocolate was once a luxury. It's how one sacred drink from the tropical forests of the Americas became one of the world's most addictive foods and transformed global trade, fueled empires, and quietly reshaped human history in ways most people never realize. Every bite of chocolate carries a story far older than most people imagine. Long before candy factories and supermarket shelves, cacao was wrapped in myth, power, and ritual. Civilizations flourished around it. Empires fought over it. Scientists studied it. Merchants crossed oceans because of it. Its journey stretches across more than 3,000 years, connecting ancient rainforests with European royal courts, colonial plantations, industrial factories, and modern supermarkets. Along the way, chocolate changed from an exclusive privilege reserved for elites into a global obsession enjoyed by billions. But the path from sacred drink to everyday indulgence was anything but simple. It was filled with conquest, innovation, greed, and a surprising amount of science. Chapter 1. The Sacred Tree of the Rainforest. Deep within the humid rainforests of what is now southern Mexico and Central America grew a tree unlike any other. Its colorful pods hung directly from the trunk, hiding dozens of bitter seeds inside. To an untrained eye, they looked ordinary. To ancient civilizations, they were priceless. Archaeological evidence suggests that the earliest use of cacao dates back more than 3,000 years, with the Olmec civilization likely among the first to cultivate and consume it. While many details remain uncertain, traces of cacao residues found in ancient pottery suggest these people had already discovered something remarkable hidden inside the fruit. Later cultures elevated cacao far beyond food. The Maya believed the tree had divine origins. Their mythology described cacao as a gift connected to the gods, and the drink became an essential part of religious ceremonies, royal feasts, weddings, and diplomatic gatherings. Preparing it was an art. Beans were fermented, dried under the sun, roasted over fire, ground into a fine paste, mixed with water, and repeatedly poured from one vessel to another until a thick layer of foam formed on top. That rich foam was often considered the finest part of the drink. Unlike modern hot chocolate, it contained no sugar. Instead, it was intensely bitter, sometimes flavored with chili peppers, flowers, herbs, vanilla, or aromatic spices. For ordinary people, it was rare. For rulers, it became a symbol of power. But even this sacred beverage was about to take on an entirely different role. Chapter 2. When money grew on trees. As civilizations evolved, cacao became more than a ceremonial drink. It became currency. Among the Aztecs, cacao beans circulated through markets almost like coins. Historical records describe people purchasing everyday goods with carefully counted beans. A rabbit might cost dozens. A turkey could require hundreds. Even taxes collected by the empire sometimes arrived in the form of cacao. Imagine carrying your savings in a small leather pouch filled with beans. That wasn't unusual. Because cacao trees could only grow in warm tropical regions, the beans remained relatively scarce in the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. Their limited supply increased their value and helped create a thriving trade network stretching hundreds of miles. The Emperor Montezuma I reportedly consumed enormous quantities of cacao drinks each day, served in elegant cups reserved exclusively for the royal court. While later stories exaggerated the numbers, there is little doubt that chocolate had become one of the empire's greatest luxury goods. Yet this prosperity depended on a fragile balance. Far beyond the horizon, ships unlike anything the Aztecs had ever seen were crossing the Atlantic. Everything that cacao represented was about to collide with an entirely different world. Chapter 3. The drink that confused Europe. When Spanish conquistadors entered the Aztec Empire in the early 16th century, they encountered countless unfamiliar foods. None puzzled them more than chocolate. The dark drink was cold, bitter, frothy, and often mixed with spices unfamiliar to European tastes. Early Spanish visitors struggled to understand why rulers treasured something that seemed almost unpleasant to drink. But curiosity has a way of changing opinions. Spanish settlers gradually experimented with the recipe. They replaced chili peppers with cane sugar. Cinnamon became a favorite addition. Sometimes black pepper or anise found its way into the mixture. Served warm instead of cold, the beverage slowly transformed into something far more appealing to European palates. For decades, Spain guarded cacao almost like a state secret. Chocolate remained an expensive luxury consumed mainly by aristocrats, wealthy merchants, and clergy. In royal courts, elegant porcelain cups filled with steaming chocolate became symbols of refinement and wealth. Soon, demand spread beyond Spain. French nobles embraced it. Italian merchants imported it. English chocolate houses emerged as fashionable meeting places where politicians, businessmen, and intellectuals debated ideas over steaming cups of the exotic drink. Few realized that Europe's newest obsession depended entirely on lands thousands of miles away, and satisfying that growing appetite would come at an enormous human cost. Chapter 4. The bitter price of sweetness. As Europe's love affair with chocolate intensified, demand for cacao exploded. The problem was simple. Cacao trees refused to grow in Europe. They required tropical climates, fertile soil, constant humidity, and patient labor. Producing cacao was slow, physically demanding work that could not easily be mechanized. Colonial powers searched for ways to increase production across the Caribbean, Central America, and later West Africa. Large plantations emerged. Alongside sugar cultivation, cacao became deeply tied to colonial economies that relied heavily on enslaved labor. Millions of Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic during the broader transatlantic slave trade. And while sugar plantations absorbed the largest numbers, cacao production in several regions also depended on exploitation and coercion. This darker chapter often disappears behind chocolate's comforting image. Yet every luxurious cup served in European palaces carried invisible connections to distant plantations where countless workers endured brutal conditions. By the 18th century, chocolate had become fashionable throughout Europe, but it still remained a luxury available mainly to the wealthy. That was about to change. A series of inventions during the Industrial Revolution would transform chocolate forever and place it within reach of ordinary people around the world. Chapter 5. The machines that changed everything. The Industrial Revolution transformed countless industries, and chocolate was no exception. For centuries, making chocolate had been slow and labor-intensive. Roasting the beans was only the beginning. Workers still had to grind them into a thick paste using heavy stone tools before mixing them by hand. Producing even a small amount required time, skill, and patience. Then the machines arrived. Steam power and mechanical grinders dramatically increased production, making chocolate cheaper and more consistent than ever before. But the biggest breakthrough came in 1828. When Dutch chemist Coenraad Johannes van Houten invented a hydraulic press that squeezed much of the natural cocoa butter out of cacao paste. The result changed everything. The remaining cocoa solids could be ground into a fine powder that mixed more easily with water or milk. Meanwhile, the extracted cocoa butter opened the door to smoother, creamier chocolate with a texture no one had experienced before. Innovation accelerated. In Switzerland, chocolatiers searched for ways to make chocolate less gritty and more luxurious. Daniel Peter combined chocolate with condensed milk developed by Henry Nestlé, creating one of the first successful milk chocolates. A few years later, Rodolphe Lindt introduced the conching process, slowly mixing liquid chocolate for hours until it became silky and melt-in-your-mouth smooth. Chocolate was no longer reserved for kings. Factories produced thousands of bars every day. Beautiful packaging turned chocolate into a gift. Advertisements connected it with comfort, romance, childhood, and celebration. A food once reserved for emperors was becoming part of everyday life. But scientists were beginning to ask an entirely different question. Why did people crave it so intensely? The history of chocolate is not simply the history of a food. It is the history of civilization itself. A bitter drink once shared in sacred ceremonies became royal luxury. Royal luxury became colonial wealth. Colonial wealth fueled industrial innovation. Industrial innovation created a global consumer product enjoyed by billions. Every major turning point in chocolate's evolution mirrored a turning point in human history. Religion gave it meaning. Empire spread it across continents. Science transformed its texture. Industry made it affordable. Globalization carried it into nearly every country on Earth. Yet behind every chocolate bar lies a chain that stretches back thousands of years to ancient rainforests, Maya temples, Aztec markets, European palaces, colonial plantations, industrial factories, and modern family farms. Perhaps the most remarkable truth is that chocolate never truly stopped being valuable. The form changed, the recipes changed, the people who controlled it changed. But humanity's fascination with cacao has remained astonishingly constant for more than 3 millennia. Very few foods can claim a legacy like that. Conclusion. The next time you unwrap a piece of chocolate, you're holding far more than a sweet treat. You're holding the legacy of ancient civilizations, the ambitions of empires, the ingenuity of inventors, and the labor of millions of people whose lives remain connected to a tree that first grew deep within tropical forests thousands of years ago. What began as a sacred, bitter drink has become one of the world's most beloved foods, bringing joy to billions while carrying a history far more complex than its sweet taste suggests. So here's something worth thinking about. If one small cacao bean could influence religion, trade, science, industry, and global culture for over 3,000 years, what everyday food in our own lives might future historians consider just as world-changing?